Hi, I'm Rival. Today, we're going to be delving into the intricacies of trading in lane. The backing gameplay is one I had earlier in a Master Grandmaster game versus a Jax, a matchup typically where the trades can be quite tricky and have to be very precise. Trading as a concept is much deeper than just hitting the enemy champion. Just like anything, it is a skill and needs to be improved on every game to become a better laner. Before we get into the guide, if you enjoy educational content and guides like the one you're about to watch, consider subscribing. It's free and you can change your mind later. Furthermore, I've also published a very in-depth wave management guide and my top 5 tips to climb, which I encourage you to watch after this video to help accent the knowledge you learned today. Now let's continue. While it might look like just fighting, high elo players have mastered the craft of effective and efficient trading to squeeze the most value out of every ability cast. While low elo players are just trying to kill each other, high elo players are looking for the optimal window to not only punish their opponent, but to last hit, deny CS, and manage their wave. A great example to watch for this technique is Zukil. Using Yone's exceptional range and spacing skill, he is able to accomplish all of the above while protecting himself from ganks. As seen in this example, Zukil uses his W in such a way that doesn't thin the wave, also he can freeze it later on. These are the little things that separate beginner laners from the best, and I'm here to guide you through the techniques used and concepts that need to be understood. Part 1. Functionality and limitations. While I'm a top laner, examples used will predominantly be melees, but certain trading aspects such as champion range will differ across roles. A lot of trading that happens top and mid lane are a mixture of spell and auto attacks, whereas ADCs usually trade with mostly auto attacks. So some of what I talk about in this guide mightn't translate directly to bot lane. Bot lane trading is a whole other beast I don't have enough knowledge or skill about to teach, as I don't know the matchups or support integration. As we discuss functionality and limitation, this envelopes basically what a champion can and can't do due to their stats and kit. An overloaded kit means the champion's spells literally do too many things inside one spell. For example, we have Action W, a 3-part ability that is close to 200 words long. Compare that to Lucian E, it literally says Lucian dashes in a target direction. However, squeezing the most value out of every spell usage and statistic will allow us to become optimal and efficient at lane trading. Aurelia, holding the longest auto attack range out of any melee champion, can auto over the wave without being autoed back. This is specific to Aurelia, thus being a part of her functionality. As Renekton cannot do this, this would be seen as one of his limitations. Understanding how a champion functions means to understand the situations in which this champion thrives and can be used at maximum potential. Once you understand this and what role your champion fulfills, you'll know what fights you can and can't take. This concept is especially prevalent in top lane, as certain champions have short or long trade patterns or are freeze or wave dependent for trading. To expand on this, every champion either excels in longer fights or shorter fights. If you don't understand which yours is, you need to think about your champion's DPS. Once your spell rotation is used, does your champion deal greatly less damage? If your answer is yes, they're a short trade pattern champion. If not, they're a long trade pattern champion. Short trade pattern champions are typically spell reliant, whereas long trade pattern champions are mostly auto reliant or a mixture of both. A short trade pattern champion example would be Kennen or Riven, where they want to use all spells and E away until cooldowns are back, to avoid counter-attacking. On the flip side of this, Jax, Sett or Fiora are perfectly fine autoing you to death with resets, as they are long trade pattern champions. Short trade equals high damage through spell rotation, but long trade equals consistent damage no matter how long they fight for. Short trade pattern champions can often fall into the pit of overtrading, where they continue to fight even when their cooldowns are depleted. Understanding when to disengage and not greed for the trade is a very important concept to grasp when piloting these champions. A trade where you do 10% of their health but take nothing back is better than a trade where you take 20% but lose 15%. Even though it's a winning trade, a free trade is always optimal because you're just gaining pressure for free. To delve deeper into optimal trading conditions, we need to understand wave states that accent our champions. Short trade pattern champions prefer to play at their tower, as the space they operate in is small and it's easy for them to disengage back into the tower once their cooldowns are depleted. They can usually manage freeze as well too. Long trade pattern champions want long lane, where they have room to move and lots of space to chase. More space equals more time. Have you ever overtraded into a Fiora only to have her ult you and chase you down the lane? Yeah, that's what she wants you to do. As a rule of thumb, you should always or at least heavily avoid trading into a stacked wave. The reasons for this are as follows. You'll be eating a lot of minion aggro as well as the damage from the enemy champion. If the trade goes badly, you'll die and miss a huge wave while also setting up the enemy champion to take plates. Even if the trade goes well, the stacked wave will crash and you're at high risk of being dove, reinforcing point 2. The only appropriate time to fight into a stacked wave is when your primary goal is to thin it. For expansion on wave management and thinning, I recommend watching my comprehensive wave management guide, which I've linked in the description. While fighting into the wave is typically incorrect, there are 2 champions that excel in stacked waves, Yasuo and Aurelia. Stacked waves accent these champions as the wave is their mobility source. A good Yasuo will E in, Q auto and E out without retaliation, as will Aurelia with her Q and auto. Part 2. Timing. This takes us into the next section, timing. Trade timing is an equally important concept to understand as actually executing the trades themselves. All too often I see clients and lower elo players fighting for no reason, placing themselves at risk for no gain. When trading, have a clear and concise goal with what you're trying to achieve. For example, I'll hard trade here so when the wave crashes, my jungler and I can have an easier time diving, unlike fighting into a stacked wave for the sake of fighting only to be dove. Timing also follows the concept of wave momentum. If you're first in the lane and can get a lead on farming, your enemy will have to last hit while you're free to harass, forcing them to have to choose between retaliating or their own income. Typically, you should always prioritize your own income above all. You are the consistent variable here. In your mind, you should have a mental checklist of what I like to call trade conditions. If one or multiple of these are met, you should trade. If they're not, you shouldn't. Things on this checklist can be like, are the enemy's spells down? Do I know where their jungler is? Do I gain more from this trade than the enemy? Are they out of position? Do I have an answer to their trade? Lots of things should be considered to make a calculated, efficient, and valuable trade. Another thing to note is trading around health potions or health advantage. If you have potions but the enemy does not, even bad trades that cost you more HP than you take can be worth it because you will heal from potions but they will not. You can also make harsh trades if you have access to honey fruit. Honey fruit control is actually a very underrated but effective laning mechanic that should be learned about and practiced. Honey fruit first spawns between 6 minutes and 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Part 3. Conclusion. If you're able to follow the trading guidelines above and play with intent, you'll find yourself noticing trading mistakes the enemy makes, which will further better you as a player. If you find yourself being frozen on or you've lost the lane, review the lane up until the point you started losing and try to think of steps to take to avoid putting yourself in that situation again. Maybe a trade had bad timing or was poorly executed. Maybe your wave was mismanaged and now you're frozen on by a long lane champion. Picking up on the mistakes you make in lane will allow you to better translate into mid game, which is where fights that win games happen. If you have any questions or things you'd like to add about the video or the concepts discussed within, leave a comment on YouTube or Reddit. I'd love for your feedback or even to learn something. All the best on your climb.